Guess where I am today? I am in Butte, Montana. So here we are at the site of the Anselmo mine. Now, back in the day when I was a grade schooler, this mine and others were still more in a state where it looked like everybody just left and the mine was exactly what it was like when they left. You might say it was more in its kind of native state. So it was a lot more interesting. In this area behind me, it's a nice grassy hill, but back in the day, there were some interesting outbuildings here. Now, as a Christian man, I would never trespass on this property, but when I was in grade school, back in the early 80s, I didn't have such convictions. So yes, we entered the mine yard. And at that time, there were some pretty interesting things that I'm kind of disappointed they're not here anymore. But like I said, one was these outbuildings. Now, I'll tell you a little story. There was one area around those outbuildings where you could see through a little hole in some outer cover material, that there was a latch and a steel door. So it was obvious that there was something on the other side of that steel door, and we wanted to know what it was. So we dug through these layers of material. I don't remember even all what they were, but eventually we uncovered a steel door that was hinged with a little latch. So we opened the latch and opened the door, and beyond was this neat little shaft station that approached up to the shafts. And in those days, the shafts of the Anselmo were open. I think they were perhaps filled in so that maybe it was only the last 200, 150 feet that was exposed, but you could actually look down into the mine, into the workings through those open shafts, and that was pretty neat. We thought that was really cool. So that shaft station approached and connected to the mine shaft, and you could look down, and then it had rail on the ground, and it had two really pristine mine cars inside. And so I'm kind of wondering why that wouldn't have been preserved. Why not restore that so that people could see it and make it part of a tour rather than just bulldoze over the top of it? I don't know. But that was one neat discovery, is that little shaft station. The next thing that I thought was worthy to retell is up on the top side. We can't get up there to see it right now, but up on the top side, on the other side of the head frame, there was a manway that went down into the ground, probably about 30 feet. There were 3 ladders, and ladders typically are 10 foot in length. So 3 ladders that went down. And of course, we climbed all the way down to the bottom of the 30 feet. And at the bottom of the 30 feet, there was a piece of fabric that had been nailed on that prevented you from going beyond, making it obvious that there was something on the other side. And so we debated. We were kind of scared because we thought somebody put that canvas there to keep people out because there was something really dangerous on the other side. So we went back and forth. I think we should cut through it and see what's on the other side. Because sometimes mines have egresses that come from underground, and who knows but that if we had just gone to the other side of that fabric, it would have given us access down into the mine, which we would have loved to have explored. But on the other hand, in the end, we decided not to cut through it and kind of chickened out to see what was on the other side. We might have seen something really incredible, but I will never know because we never did cut through that. And so we never discovered if there was anything on the other side of that. The other thing that was pretty crazy, actually, now that I think of it, again, those open shafts, somebody had tied one of those thick kind of ropes so that it hung down inside the shaft. And being what now I would say was rather stupid, We climbed down that rope and descended down into the shaft. And because I think it was partially filled with dirt, there was a bottom about 200, 150, 200 feet down. So we stood on the bottom and looked around, thought it was really neat. What I cannot remember is how in the world we got back out of that shaft. I have a vague impression that we climbed up and just stood on the cross bracing in between the shaft compartments and just worked our way back out. But we really did do that. I'm not making it up. We really did do that and got down and out of that shaft. The other thing that was really neat in this area was it would have been about 10-foot diameter octagonal air shaft. It had a big metal cage over it, but if you looked down, you could see just some incredible woodwork. It was actually framed in an octagon shape, and it went down and took a turn. Well, we dropped a rock down that thing, and you could just hear that tumble down into infinity. It was like the thing never had an end. It was really incredible. So in summary, I have some really interesting and good memories of things we did here, neat things that I remember about it. But I just want to reiterate that I'm a little confused and a little bit disappointed that when they reclaimed this, they didn't restore those buildings. You know, they should have restored them, brought them back up to health, and they should have opened up that little shaft station and let people look and let people look down in the shaft. You know, they should have preserved those things, because I believe those things are of great historical significance and they're very intriguing, and I think that people would have really enjoyed to see those things. So here we find ourselves at the site of the Mountain Con mine. Now, as you can see, the head frame still stands along with all the idler towers, and of course the hoist house is still intact. Unfortunately, some not well-meaning people have thrown rocks through all the windows, so a lot of them are shattered, but otherwise I think it's in pretty good shape. I'd like to note that at this site they've painted a mile high and a mile deep right on these ore buildings here. And that's because we are standing at an elevation of about a mile high above sea level right here. And of course, this is the mine that had the very deepest shaft in Butte, over a mile in depth. And that seems like it would be a pretty exciting cage ride to go all the way down to the bottom of that 1 mile. And of course, if you didn't know, the cages moved pretty fast. If my calculations are correct, you could go about 20 miles an hour. And that's a pretty fast ride. So this particular mine featured a 5-compartment shaft. Counting from the left, we have number 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 and 2 would have been the rock shafts, and the 3rd shaft would have been men and materials. Then I believe you would have had a shaft for a manway egress and air piping, electrical and utilities of that type. And then you would have had the shaft associated with this extra shiv wheel that's mounted to the structure here. I believe that would have been the ropeman shaft. And the ropeman shaft would have been used by men whose entire job was just to move equipment such as locomotives and probably large mine cars from level to level as they needed it. So they had one dedicated shaft for the ropemen to use to do all of their various work.